Hey guys, it's Christopher Rausch, the creator of the Kick-Ass Guide to Life, coming to you back with another video of a viewer question. This comes to us courtesy of Facebook. I believe Dina Hill asked me this question, and it was regarding leadership and the accountability factor that we have with our teams. I personally have over 20 years in leadership experience. I'm currently a director of operations as part of my day job. And so this is definitely a question that's up my wheelhouse. And I think it's a great question, Dina, because, you know, leaders, I have a lot of different thoughts on this, so I'm just going to kind of shoot them as my brain comes to them. You know, leaders not seeing themselves as they need to be accountable by their team are poor leaders. And I'll tell you why, because leadership is based on relationships. And relationships are based on who you know, who you like, who you trust. And if you don't have that established with your team, if it's just a dictatorship or if the leader is managing people, then you have a disruption in what leadership truly is. I believe that leaders lead people and they manage operations. And in order to have a great leadership, you have to have strong relationships with your team, each and every one of your team. That is important. A lot of managers, a lot of leaders don't take that time. They take it for granted, like, okay, I'm just going to tell those people what to do, and then I'm going to go off, I'm going to do things that feed my ego. I'm going to go out there and make big decisions and go to meetings and, you know, do all these other things. But the truth be told, without your team, without those people on the front line, answering the phones, shipping the orders, you know, doing whatever it takes to make the business, without those people being really engaged and passionate about what it is that they're doing, then what kind of product are you really putting out there? And what does that say about you? I mean, I can make anybody do anything. I can tell them, hey, this is the SOP. Here's the procedures. Here's what you have to do. Here are the metrics you have to make or you'll get fired. That is not leading. That is intimidation. And that is coming from an egoic standpoint, where I believe that leaders should get their hands dirty, go out there and do the things that their staff does, walk a mile in their shoes, feel what it feels like to be them. We take it for granted if we may have done that job 20 years ago and say, oh, I know what that's all about. Well, that's bullshit, because things change. I still pride myself on going out to the warehouse and working in the warehouse, working with my guys in facilities, working with my guys in mail services. You know, that's just who I am, because I want that connection. And when you have that connection, then you have that trust. And when you have trust, then you actually have a collaborative relationship. And I'll tell you what, as far as leaders go, your leader really should be asking his or her team, how am I doing? I mean, what other benchmark do you really want to know how you're doing? Of course, you want to know how you're doing by your boss. But the key indicator is that your staff feels comfortable coming to you and saying, and this is something that's huge for me. I ask my staff all the time, if I do something that pisses them off or they don't agree with, to come and have a conversation with me. Just because I'm the boss, which I hate that word. I dislike that word a lot. Just because I'm the boss doesn't mean I'm infallible. And if you can have constructive feedback from your staff where they can come to you and they can feel they trust you and say, hey, listen, you know, I didn't agree with that procedural change that you just did. And here's why. Here's some facts that maybe you're not aware of. That's the kind of relationship I want with my staff. So as far as your situation goes, where your leader doesn't feel that they need to be accountable to their team, that's crappy. And I feel sorry for you being in that situation, but you're not alone. A lot of people have also been placed in leadership roles because they were good at their core job. So you're a great salesperson, all of a sudden you're a sales manager. They don't give that person any training. So in some respects, you can be mad at that leader, but also I encourage you to look at it from a different perspective and ask, were they given the proper training? Were they sent to Dale Carnegie? Were they sent to, drawing a blank right now, guy down in San Diego? Doesn't matter. But were they sent to leadership training? Did they get follow-up leadership training? Did they have a leadership mentor? Do they have somebody in their life that they look up to who's a great leader? Hopefully nobody's looking up to our current leader of the United States of America. And I'll say this because I really don't care if you don't agree with me or not, but what a shitty leader. I mean, good Lord. I just heard his press conference this morning. Don't get me started, but wow, not a good leader. Back to your point, Dina, what you can do. One of the things I learned really early on in my career against my better judgment early actually was to manage up. Now we think of that we are managed by our boss, but there is a critical aspect of that, of managing up and managing expectations, but also opening our mouths and communicating with our boss when it's uncomfortable. And I've helped and coached a lot of people on that, being able to say, listen, I got to have this conversation with my boss. He's driving me crazy, but I'm afraid he's going to take it wrong. So you manage up and you walk in and say, and you talk to him about that, and being able to, what is it that you want? What is it you want for your boss to behave like? I don't think you're going to get them overnight to realize that, but potentially, bringing it up in a department meeting and having people chime in. Of course, that takes courage and confidence. A lot of people don't have that to speak up in the workplace because they're afraid of getting fired. They're afraid of retaliation. But there are constructive ways to do that. Also, you can actually suggest that, hey, if you're a leader also, you can say, hey, listen, I've read this really great leadership book, or I heard about this really great leadership book. I bought you a copy. What do you say that both you and I read that and we learn about it and we become better leaders together? That's one thing to do. And going back to that feedback, a critical component of that is also saying, may I give you some feedback? Is now a good time? That's all part of the relationship and the communication coaching that I've done a lot of in the past. I don't do it so much anymore, periodically, because that's a lot of work. Trying to change people's perspectives and perceptions and expectations and egos. It takes quite a bit of time. I usually coach for a year on that. I'm trying to think. What else? It's a tough situation, yes, but ultimately, you're not going to change that particular person, most likely, but just think about what it is that you want. And then also look for what's good in that particular individual. But yeah, that's definitely a problem that's going on all over, is that people are being placed in leadership positions that they don't have the qualifications for. We don't spend money on continuing education. We spend money on all sorts of other things, but we don't invest in our people. So maybe if your company has a suggestion box, suggest that leadership people get trained, remedial training, refresher training. We get trained and then we go off and we get back into our old habits. You can do that. Another thing you can do is you can enter your company. This is something that I did. I entered my company into we have a local newspaper called the Orange County Register's Best Company to Work For. And so my initial reaction with that was, okay, let's get in there and let's see where we place, and let's make it a corporate goal every year to improve our leadership, to improve our processes, to improve our onboarding, to improve our morale and our corporate culture, so that each year we progressively go up. And it's not about being number one, it's about that progressive action of becoming better, and that focus on that every single year to say, okay, what can we do to improve? We're never going to be perfect, and that's not a realistic goal, but we can always strive for improvement, continuous improvement. So maybe suggest something like that to the boss if you have a suggestion box. There's just things like that you can do. You can look at the review process and perhaps suggest something like, I know there's a 360 review, and I know some people like it and some people don't. I know for me, when I do reviews, I go out there and I look at my staff and their customers and I get their feedback on it. But also for me, I want to know how I'm doing, not only for my boss, but for my team. And I know I'm different, but that's what's happening. So Dina, thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate it. Hit me up on private message if I missed something, or if you have other questions. I'm here for you. It's definitely an engaging topic that I love speaking about. Leadership is just tremendous. I've had great leaders and I've had poor leaders. And again, you just have to manage up and have some of those tough conversations, because they're human too. And if you can break into that and establish that trust and that respect, then you really have a good collaborative relationship that you can build on, all right? So if you guys have questions, I love doing this. Send me an email, Christopher@ChristopherRausch.com, RAUSCH, Christopher@ChristopherRausch.com. I'd love to answer your question here on video, and we'll just talk. We'll just have dialogue. So I'm here for you. Take care. Go out there and manage up and have a great, awesome, kick-ass day. Thanks so much.